My single goal today is to help all of you as much as possible. We're going to be talking about some of my real life clients, some of their employees, some of their struggles, some of their mistakes, but then ultimately the savings that they ended up enjoying. I was hooked. I learned at a very young age that hard work pays off. With hard work, you can do pretty much anything you set your mind to. We have 4 options when it comes to employee injuries. The first option states where you can avoid it. But really, is that really an option? To avoid injuries completely? To me, you have to get rid of all your employees. The other option is to accept the risk. To me, that's kind of like giving up. Oh, okay. Well, my employees are going to get hurt. I get it. It's my hope it would make me super happy that if you left here today, went back to your office, implemented a few of these things that we're about to talk about to save your company thousands of dollars and make you look like the hero. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'm super excited that you decided to come to the Owatonna room. This is the best room. You don't know it yet, but it is. And my single goal today is to help all of you as much as possible. We're going to be talking about some of my real life clients, some of their employees, some of their struggles, some of their mistakes, but then ultimately the savings that they ended up enjoying. Now, I want to help you as much as possible, but before I can help you, I believe you need to trust me a little bit. And to trust me, you need to know me a little bit, okay? So I want to spend the first few minutes giving you a little background, not only on myself, but also on the unique process that we've developed. All right, so there I am with my mom back in the day. I'm an only child and pretty much a mama's boy growing up. We're still real close. And I wanted to start here with my story because my parents got a divorce when I was 1 year old. 1 year old. And my biological dad completely disappeared from my life. No contact whatsoever. And my mom got remarried again to my stepdad when I was about 3. And to know my stepdad, he's like a good old boy, right? He's from a small town, did construction all his life. He loves hunting and fishing and shooting trap or on the bowling league or just drinking beer with his buddies. And he wasn't around much either. So I didn't have any relationship with my biological dad and a minimal relationship with my stepdad. But one thing I do remember about my stepdad is Monday Night Football. He was hooting and hollering about football. He just loved it, man. This is the most excited I ever seen this dude get is watching football. He'd be sitting there with a PBR in one hand and jumping around. And my little mind, probably 5, 6 years old, is taking some notes about what my dad is interested in. And when I had the chance to play football in 7th grade, man, was I excited. I remember getting those pads and that helmet and rushing off to the field and practicing my little heart out. And then it's game day, right? All that hard work is about to pay off. My parents come to the stands and I'm super excited, sitting on the bench, ready to go. And that's where I stayed. Not only that entire game, but the entire season, bro. I never got to play 1 minute of one game that entire season. It was embarrassing, but it also lit a fire under my ass. This was never going to happen again. I convinced my poor mom to buy me one of those cheap plastic weight sets from Sears. They were filled with concrete. They crack apart and your concrete's falling out of your weights. And I hit the weights hard, a lot of push-ups, a lot of sit-ups, a lot of running, a lot of biking. And then 8th grade football season rolled around, right? Get my pads, get my helmet, run to the field, listen to the coach, practice hard. It's game day again, 1 year later. And all that hard work for the past 9 months, it worked. I went from never playing, to always sitting on the bench, to never sitting on the bench, and I was hooked. I was hooked. I learned at a very young age that hard work pays off. With hard work, you can do pretty much anything you set your mind to. There's the Annandale football team. Now, football, unfortunately, didn't last forever. But in a sense, I created a bit of a monster. I became super determined, super driven, but no outlet anymore. Football's gone. So then I turned to the military. In 95, I joined the Army, had basic training down in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I became a combat medic, and I excelled in the military. I then later started at Normandale Community College. It was the cheapest college credits I could find, and I'm paying the bill, right? I was there for a couple of years, and then I transferred over to Northwestern College of Chiropractic. I left there as a doctor of chiropractic in 2001. And I did well through all of it. But this mindset that I developed of being super driven and determined, I feel like it's both a blessing and a curse, right? It's a blessing in the sense, if I set a goal, I'm going to crush it. It's a curse in the sense, I'm not very patient, right? I have a hard time staying present because I'm very future focused. Stopping to smell the roses, that sounds like a complete waste of time for me, right? It says go, go, go. My clients love it. My clients love it because I get them results. However, it can affect my other relationships. Might want to talk to my girlfriend about that. She's sitting right over there. Work comp has a medical component to it. Hope you agree. And I have a medical background. So when presented with a threat or a risk, in this case, let's call it employee injuries, right? That's a risk. The best way I can explain the difference in my approach to this whole work comp process is the fact that we have 4 options when it comes to employee injuries. The first option states we can avoid it. But really, is that really an option? To avoid injuries completely, to me, you have to get rid of all your employees. Sub everything out or use vendors, right? That doesn't make sense. The other option is to accept the risk. To me, that's kind of like giving up. Oh, okay. Well, my employees are going to get hurt. I get it. Well, no, you can be a little more proactive than that. Insurance agents. I'm an insurance agent. Can transfer the risk. In the state of Minnesota, you're obligated to have a work comp insurance policy if you have employees, right? And by buying that insurance, you are now transferring the risk of those employees' injuries over to the insurance company. And if the employee gets hurt, that insurance company is going to make them whole as long as you pay your insurance premiums. That's a common, I guess, treatment or a way to address the threat of employee injuries. But I live my life, I do sell a lot of insurance policies, but I live my life mostly in the mitigation process. What can we do to prevent these injuries from happening in the first place? Well, acronyms apparently are the cool thing to do today, so I had to come up with one myself, and I'm a Annandale High School graduate, so I had to keep the word real short. I came up with PIP, the PIP comp process. And this thing has layers. The first P is people, injury, and then policy. Under people, we got the hiring process. So we got to find the right people, and we got to try to eliminate the ones that just can't cut it, mentally or physically. We need to weed them out. Also under people is training. So we hire the right people. Now we got to train them. And this can start from onboarding to formal safety training to the informal safety training. Under injury, so despite the fact we hired the right person, we got them trained up, people are still going to get hurt. It's just the way it is. So if they get hurt, we have to have a new injury response process in place that gets them back to work quickly and minimizes the impact on your insurance premiums. Next is the management. If the injury results on a claim, they say work comp claim adjusters have between 100 and 200 open claims on their desk at any one time. Things fall through the cracks. I mean, they're human, right? So it's important to take a proactive process in managing your own claims and keeping track of them. And then, finally, under policy, we'd hate to pay all those insurance premiums and have a claim denied. So we got to make sure your coverages are correct, and then the pricing under policy. There are some pricing strategies that we're going to review that's going to save you a ton of money. It's my hope, it would make me super happy that if you left here today, went back to your office, implemented a few of these things that we're about to talk about to save your company thousands of dollars and make you look like the hero. Okay, I'd love that. Under each one of those columns is about 50 different processes. We're not going to cover all 50, of course. I would put you to sleep. But we're going to focus on a few of my favorites. And focus on job descriptions, medical triage, return to work program, and we're going to talk about your scheduled credit and also your LCM, which stands for your Loss Cost Multiplier. People also call it your tier. There's Donald. I couldn't find a very good picture of Donald. I like this one because he looks very military-ish, right? This client was referred to me by another agent. This agent was getting a little nervous. He thought he might lose his client because their work comp insurance rates were kind of getting out of control, and he didn't know how to reel it back. So he brought me in on this client. So let me tell you about Donald. Donald worked for this contractor for a whopping 13 hours, walked off the job. All he said was, "This is too hard," and left. No contact from Donald until 7 months later. My client receives a letter from Donald's attorney stating, "Oh, Donald got hurt at work during those 13 hours, and he has all these medical bills and MRIs and PT and lost wages that we want you to pay for, about $80,000 worth." My client, understandably, was like, "What? That doesn't make any sense." So this insurance company, I shouldn't say the name, this insurance company, they do the math, right? And basically the math is, if we pay these two attorneys to continue to fight this, and we're paying them $400 an hour, and we estimate it's going to take X number of hours, so this is going to cost us this much just in legal bills. Maybe we should offer Donald some money that's less than that and see if he just goes away. And in this case, it was $13,000. Donald took the money. The claim was closed. But the bad part for my client was that $13,000 was now being recorded on their experience mod, causing their mod to go up above a 1. And they are a commercial subcontractor. A mod above a 1 for a commercial subcontractor can be detrimental to their business, to say the least. Because a lot of general contractors today are requiring their subcontractors to have an experience mod of 1 or lower. Now they have creeped above a 1. But there is a trick. We got it back down. There is a trick to fix that. We got it back down to a 0.95. So if you are a subcontractor with a mod slightly above a 1, talk to me, and I can tell you how to get that down below a 1. So the first key is people. Remember PIP. People is the first P. Travelers did a study where they analyzed 1.5 million work comp claims that came across their desk, and they discovered that 35% of those claims occurred within the first 12 months of employment. So a lot of new hires are getting injured within the first 12 months, over a third. So on the process, we are on people, and we're going to get into job descriptions. In my book here, all of you can have a copy of the book. They're on the table. Just grab one as you leave. In the book, under each section, I do a self-assessment. For job descriptions, the first question is listed there. Do we have well-written job descriptions for each position? If not, the thought of sitting in front of your computer and in front of a blank Word document and writing job descriptions, I'd hate that job. So here's a couple resources to help you out. If you go to onetonline.org or occupationalinfo.org and you type in whatever kind of job description you want, up it comes. You can simply copy and paste it, put it in your Word document, and maybe you're 60% of the way there. This will help you get started. Self-assessment question number 2, do we provide clear physical requirements or job descriptions? So this is very important to, okay, let's pretend you're Donald. You're reading your job description, and you're reading that I have to lift 50 pounds up to 100 times per day from the ground to waist. And if you're Donald and you can't do that, you may not take the job, right? But also, under your physical requirements section, I would recommend going to this website here. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's the URL. On there, they define the physical demand level for different jobs. I think there's 5 different ones ranging from sedentary to very heavy. And I just copy and pasted the one for heavy. And it says there, the United States Department of Labor defines heavy work as exerting up to 51 to 100 pounds of force occasionally. And occasionally is defined as activity or conditions that exist up to 1/3 of the time. I believe this can create another layer of liability protection for your company by copying and pasting something like this from a government resource defining the physical demand level for that job. Next question. Do we set clear expectations and use verbiage to reduce our liability? Here's a couple sentences that I would recommend including on all your job descriptions. If Donald's employer would have included this on Donald's job description, I believe it could have been a different outcome in the courts. The first one says, I will be required to perform additional tasks not listed above, but are considered essential to this position. And that last one says, I can perform all tasks and meet all physical requirements listed above without special accommodations. So I would include that on your job descriptions also. And job descriptions seem very elementary or simple, but they are a big bang for the buck. Don't underestimate them. And then you go through all this work of writing these beautiful job descriptions. Please, please, please have a line for them to sign and date the job description, stating they acknowledge it. Here's a letter of recommendation provided by one of my clients where they list a few things that has really helped them with their work comp process and lowering their experience mod. And you'll notice one of the things they listed is job descriptions. It had a big impact on their company. If you like, again, I want to help you as much as I can. If you go to this website, jasonjwebb.com/job description, you will be emailed a job description in which I helped one of my clients write, and you can kind of use that as a reference when writing your own. All right, Heath, welcome. Heath, this client came to me from my podcast. He was a guest on the Minnesota Made podcast, and we became friends, and he wanted me to look at his insurance. And sure enough, I was able to save him a bunch of money. So Heath was on a lift, very similar to this one. And you can see this is the proper, mount or dismount process or procedure to get on and off one of these things. But what Heath did, typically there's like a chain or a gate right here. So you move the chain, come off the side, step down the little ladder, and you're home free, right? But what Heath did, he came up to the chain, moved it, and rather than coming down the ladder, he did one of these where he swung his foot around and put his foot over here. And he put his foot right about there as the lift was coming down, and it crushed Heath's foot. Ouch. So Heath goes to the doctor. He went to Minnesota Occupational Health. This has been a client of mine for a while. So their return to work program is dialed in. They have a relationship built with MinOc. And MinOc writes up some work restrictions. Heath can and cannot do that. As far as his physical abilities. And my client, their light duty program is dialed in. They have light duty available for him, and they tell Heath to come back to work. Not only they verbally tell Heath to come back to work, but they do so in writing, which is important. So Heath's like, no, man, I'm good. My foot hurts. I'm going to sit at home for a while and sit this one out. My client's response was, no, we got light duty for you. We can follow your work restrictions. You need to come back to work. But yet he refused. So I advised my client to notify their work comp insurance company. In this case, it's SFM. SFM is probably the best work comp company as far as claim management comes. They were all over this. SFM did what they had to do, and they cut off Heath's work loss benefits. So if you sit at home injured, you're entitled to up to 2/3 of your average weekly rate. That's what Heath was hoping for, right? So SFM said, no, we're cutting those benefits off. Now Heath became much more motivated. He came back to work, got on light duty, and we were able to keep that claim as medical only. And I'll talk more about that coming up. So this was written by the NCCI, who is the rating bureau for workers' compensation in about 35 states of the United States. And basically what this is saying is that most states in the United States is an experience rating adjustment state, an ERA state. And the importance of this is, if you can keep your work comp claims as medical only, which is injury code 6 on the loss runs, if you can keep them as medical only, the impact of that claim is going to be reduced by 70% when they calculate your experience mod. 70% reduction. So in Heath's case, let's say You know, he went to the doctor a few times, he went to physical therapy, and he accrued, let's say, $10,000 in medical bills, but we were able to keep it as medical only. So when they calculated the mod for that next year, that $10,000 worth of medical bills was cut down to $3,000, which really saves and helps on the experience mod. The experience mod is a big price driver for work comp. All right, so here we are back in the PIP comp process, people injury policy. We are under injury management, and we're talking about the return to work program. A self-assessment question out of the book states, is our return to work program presented as a benefit to our employees? For whatever reason, employees kind of feel like they're the victim when they're asked to come back to work on light duty. They're like, oh, I just want to sit home and rest, and I don't want to come back to work. But the reality is your return to work program at your company is a benefit to them. Because like I said, when they're sitting at home resting, they're only getting paid 2/3 of their average weekly rate. They might have to wait 2 to 3 weeks before they receive their first payment. They might develop a victim mindset while they're sitting home watching daytime TV. And they're showing that they're going to recover faster if they're at work. Work is therapeutic. Next question. Have we prepared a list of available light duty tasks that are ready to go? I highly recommend this. In Minnesota, the waiting period is 3 days, which means you have to get your injured employees back to work within 3 calendar days. So that Friday injury means they have to be back to work on Monday. Okay? And if they come back to work and you see Heath with his broken foot up, and you're like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with you, right? I don't have any light duty that I can think of. You're going to be much more inclined to send Heath back home and say, I don't know what to have you do. Unless you have a written list of light duty that's already available within your company, ready to go. So be proactive with that, please. And if you really can't come up with anything, I don't know if any of you have heard of Light Duty Pathway. It's a company out there. So the way Light Duty Pathway works is, let's say Heath has a doctor's appointment coming up again in 3 days, and you're hoping that his work restrictions will either be lifted or lightened a little bit. So you get Heath hooked up with Light Duty Pathway, in which Heath sits on his smartphone, watches safety-related videos, reads some things, answers some questions. It's interactive. Light Duty Pathway will track his time that he's on there, and it kind of fills that gap for the short term of light duty. And again, the importance of this is keeping that claim as medical only, because medical only claims are reduced by 70% when they calculate your mod. And your mod is a big price driver. Again, I want to help you as much as I can. So if you go to this domain, jasonjwebb.com/light-duty-list, you will be emailed a sample list of light duty that this one is written for manufacturing companies, but it'll give you an idea, even if you're not a manufacturing company, of some of the things you can have your injured employees do if they crush their foot on a scissor lift, right? All right, next question out of the book. It states, do we receive clear work restrictions from the treating physician? This is a problem. I still have to try to work through this problem. I don't always have a solution for this. It's my understanding that all injured employees should be back to work as long as they're not one of these 4. If they're contagious, hospitalized, heavily medicated, or if they have a head injury, stay home. Other than that, get your butt back to work, right? But a lot of treating physicians don't really follow that rule. And I've even seen small town doctors who Heath might have been seeing for, since he's a little boy, and he goes to the doctor and the doctor says something like, well, deer season hunting is coming up next week. What do you want, a couple weeks off of work, or what are you thinking, right? And they let their patient determine how much time they want off of work. That crap does not happen at Minnesota Occupational Health. These guys are legit. So if your company is within, I would say within a 30-minute drive of Minoc Health, they got about 4 locations spread out through the metro. I would highly recommend that you develop a relationship with them. Now in Minnesota, you cannot dictate where your injured employee goes to receive care, unless you're a member of the UCWCP. And you'd only be a member of those guys if you are a union contractor, okay? So let's say you're not a member of the UCWCP and you want your injured employees to go to MinOc Health, okay? If you provide a convincing recommendation, they will typically follow it 90% of the time. So the recommendation might go like this. Heath, man, that's terrible about your foot. And that really sucks. So you got to go to the doctor, obviously. You can go to any doctor you want to. However, I strongly recommend you go to Minnesota Occupational Health. They're about 20 minutes from here. The reason being is that they're trained in occupational medicine. They know about our company. They have a copy of your job descriptions. They are aware that we have a return to work program here, and they do a great job. They have a proven track record. So I would strongly suggest you go there. 90% of the time, they're going to follow your recommendation. Next question, are we offering light duty in writing? If you remember in Heath's case, the light duty was offered to Heath both verbally and in writing. And when Heath refused to come back to work on light duty, luckily my client was following their program and they took the written offer of light duty, gave it to SFM, and SFM denied his lost time benefits. So please offer light duty, start doing so in writing. On your letter, you want to include things like where and when to report for work, what they will be doing while on light duty, the fact that regular wages will be paid. Now, you can pay your injured employees less than their regular wages. It's legal to do so. However, I don't recommend it for two reasons. One, if you pay them less, now there's going to be a work loss part of that claim. It's no longer going to be considered medical only, and you're going to lose out on that 70% reduction on the mod. The other thing is a lot of employees feel that's unfair. And when employees feel it's unfair, that's when they call the attorney. And when an attorney gets involved, it's no good, all right? So, light duty offer. I talked about having a letter offering light duty in writing. If you go to this website, jasonjwebb.com/light-duty-offer, you will be sent a copy of the letter that I recommend my clients to use. And you can change it and make it your own. All right, so now we're on triage. People, injury, policy. We're under injury, and triage is mentioned both under the response and management. Now, if you're not using medical triage, I highly, highly recommend it. You already have it available to you. It's typically free of charge. It cuts claim frequency by 30 to 50%. It adds another layer of liability protection for your company. And the way it works is, so in Heath's case, Heath was told, well, not Heath, he was obviously like an emergency case. He had to go straight to the ER. But this is for all non-emergency injuries. So let's say somebody comes to you and says, I tweaked my back, right? I think I can still work, but I just want to let you know. And you're sitting there like, okay, well, should you go to the doctor? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I just want to let you know. And you guys are going back and forth trying to make a medical decision on if they should receive medical care or not. And that places you in an awkward situation. So with triage, that tweaked back injury employee would be instructed to call the nurse hotline. It'd speak to a registered nurse trained in occupational health. Then the nurse would ask that injured employee questions directly to help determine what the next best type of care would be. They could tell them to go right back to work. They could tell them to go home, take the day off and put some ice on it, or they could tell them to go straight to the doctor. And if you have a relationship with MinOc Health or a relationship with any doctor that you want them referred to, let the triage people know. And then they'll tell them to go receive care there, right? Another cool thing about that is all those conversations between the nurse and your injured employee are documented. You get a copy of that. A lot of them are recorded. So let's say Heath, his cousin's an attorney, and his cousin's like, you could collect a lot of money on this, Heath. Let's see what we can get. And Heath changes his story. I wasn't stepping off the lift. Somebody pushed me off the lift, or whatever it might be, right? Well, that recorded conversation with triage, some of those conversations can be retrieved and used to help you in front of the judge. And it's free. Did I say triage is free? typically. Like if you're not doing it, I would highly recommend it. So reduces claim frequency by 30 to 50%. That sounds like a pie in the sky claim, but let me show you. Here is a plastic manufacturing company. The owner, I met him at the gym, became friends. He wanted me to take a look at his insurance and ended up saving him some money. But the plastic manufacturing company, it's 150 employees. Their mod is 1.0. They're paying about $155,000 for their work comp premium. Over here, their 2020 loss runs have 12 claims on them. So in the year 2020, they had 12 injuries or 12 claims, but 6 of those claims are showing up as $0 paid. This is like page 2 of the loss runs. And this page is showing nothing paid for work loss, no indemnity payments. 4 claims on here showing 0 payments, and 2 of them are very small, right? So there's a debate on this that I go back and forth with some people, but if you use triage in this situation, typically these claims would have never happened. So 6 of the claims show $0 paid. So we could go from 12 claims to 6 claims just like that. That's cutting claim frequency by 50%, and maybe there might be a couple more that could have been eliminated. Now imagine I'm your agent, and I'm going to market to try to negotiate the best price for you. All underwriters know the fact that with frequency comes severity. If they have a lot of frequent claims, real soon, sooner or later, one of those little claims are going to pop and it's going to be a big one. So I might have a little more difficult time negotiating the best pricing for your company if you have 12 claims rather than 6 or 4 claims. And a good way to reduce claim frequency, again, is through triage.
Question on that, that's okay.
Yeah.
For that piece, because we do have a triage,
Yeah.
do those, the ones that are 0, do they fall off of the loss runs, or are they included in the?
They're included. Like if you file a claim, it's going to show up on your loss runs regardless if there's anything paid out or not, right? Now, if you use triage, depending on the insurance company, if they called and spoke to the nurse and the nurse said, just go back to work, no claim. If the nurse said, go home, put some ice on it, come back to work tomorrow, probably no claim, right? If they go to the doctor and accrue a doctor bill, well, then there's going to be a claim for sure. That's typically the trigger, a doctor bill. Yep. All right, so cuts claim frequency by 30 to 50%. Some really smart dude wrote these quotes in his book. And the first one's talking about scheduled credits. Okay, all work comp policies in Minnesota have a scheduled credit listed on them. Well, any work comp policy of size. Okay, so underwriters in Minnesota for workers' compensation are authorized to give up to a 40% credit on your work comp or up to a 25% debit or anywhere in between. So that's a 65% swing in price just based on your scheduled credit. And then the other quote is talking about the LCM. LCM stands for Loss Cost Multiplier. It's also called multiplier. It's called tier. There's a bunch of names for it. It all means the same thing. So depending on what tier you're placed in, it could be, some companies have 3 tiers. Some companies have 1. Some have 7. They're all over the place. But think of it as good, better, best as far as the tier or the LCM that you're placed in. And depending on what kind of tier you're in, it can make up to a 3x difference in your pricing, 300% difference. So the LCM can affect your price up to 3 times. Your scheduled credit can affect your pricing up to 65%. So it's important to understand these 2 variables. So here we go. PIP comp process, people, injury, policy. Under policy, we're talking about scheduled credit and the LCM. This is a daycare. This is one of my newest clients. They just became a client on 4/1, so last month. They were referred to me by a CPA. The CPA is looking at their profit and loss or whatever, their financials, and notice their work comp and their insurance prices going out of control. So they asked the daycare to call me, and they have one of the worst experience mods that I've ever seen in my life, 2.23. That's the new one. Last year it was 2.54, so it's actually coming down, which it's bad. 1 is average, okay? So I asked the underwriter for a copy of their work comp premium worksheet so I could see something on here. It's called the scheduled modification. That's the scheduled credit. Selective Insurance Company came out at the best price. That's the best price I could find. I presented it to my new, I guess, prospect. They said, that looks great. You're saving me 40 grand right out of the gate. I'm going to go with it. And this was for work comp, liability, property, auto, accident insurance, all of it. So I was saving them 40 grand out of the gate. And they wanted to come with me. Then I went back to the underwriter. And before I told them to bind coverage, I asked them to reconsider this 15% debit that they put on there. I asked them to review the 5-year action plan I put together for them and to review the injury analysis that was included in the quote packet. And they said, okay, I'll run it up the chain. So they come back the next day and they changed the 15% debit to a 7.4% credit, and it saved them another $23,000. So then I had the joy of calling this brand new client back, and I said, well, your policies are issued and I was able to save you another $23,000 just because I knew what to look for. Look for your scheduled credit. We're going to get to that in the self-assessment here. This client is a residential landscaper with 50 employees. Their minimum mod is 0.70, which means if they went 3 years with absolutely zero work comp claims, their experience mod would bottom out at 0.70. And these guys are already at 0.77. They're doing awesome. I've been working with them for a little bit. Now, before I merged my agency with Corporate 4 over in Edina, I didn't have access to nearly as many insurance companies as I do now. And I had them placed with SFM, and you'll see SFM's LCM, the multipliers are up here. SFM is awesome. In a sense, you get what you pay for, and that's no different with insurance. SFM's not the cheapest, but they're one of the best. Not only on loss control, but I also feel like they do an awesome job in claims. But when I was looking at their LCM of 1.5, which is the best one that SFM had to offer at the time, was 1.5, I thought we could do better. And if you're curious on what your LCM is or your tier, you could go to the MWCIA website. There's the long URL. Just go to their website and you can find a place where you input your insurance company's name and you can see what LCM you're placed in. Okay? This isn't private information. Anybody can have access to this. So they're at a 1.5 LCM, and where this plays into your insurance costs is if you pull out your work comp declaration sheet, it'll look a lot like this one right here, where you have the classification code for your employees here. So this first one says landscape gardening and drivers, comp code 0042. And they have about $1 million in payroll under that code. Now this rate per 100, $3.71 per 100, is where the LCM plays a role. The lower the LCM, the lower the rate per 100. So then you simply take this number, 1 million, divided by 100 times this number equals this number. And this is the unadjusted premium over here. So you end up adding all these up, then you got to factor in scheduled credits and discounts and so on. Then you come up with your final price way at the bottom. But I just want you to know where the LCM plays a role in this equation. So we decided to go to market because I was pretty confident we could find them a better price. And sure enough, we found them a company with an LCM of 0.852. I don't know how great they're going to be with handling claims or loss control. I loved the fact how good of a job SFM did, but time will tell. It saved them $23,000 though on their work comp insurance. And just to show you the wide range of LCMs that are out there, here's one, Standard Fire Insurance Company. That's who I placed my client with. They are owned by Travelers, and it's 0.852. Here's another one for Travelers called Travelers Casualty and Surety Company. This is called the Writing Company, okay? That company is owned by Travelers and has an LCM that is exactly 3 times that of what I placed my client with, which will affect the premiums by 300%. Now that I merged with Corporate 4, here's a list of all the LCMs that I try to keep track of. They're listed under this multiplier column, and you see they vary widely. So I got to know what LCM my client is with currently and try to decide if we can find a better one for them. Scheduled credit and LCM, the self-assessment questions are quite easy. You see how much this can affect your pricing, right? So ask yourself, do you know what your scheduled credit currently is? And if it's not maxed out at 40% credit, what is required to max it out? Maybe the underwriter just wants a copy of your return to work program. You have that ready, you send it over, and you instantly save 20% just like that. So find out what your current scheduled credit is, and the same goes for your LCM. What loss cost multiplier are we currently placed in, and can we improve that? And what is required to get in a better tier or a better LCM? So what's required is probably going to fall under one of these 50 things that I have listed here. But you got to ask the question. Now, you're not going to have access to the underwriters directly, so you're going to have to coach up your agent maybe a little bit and ask them, hey, what tier are we in? What's their scheduled credit? Can you ask the underwriter how we can improve that and come up with a game plan? How to get the best pricing on your work comp insurance. First, do not shop your insurance every year. You are going to cause underwriter burnout. Imagine you work for Travelers, you're an underwriter, and you have seen that same account for the last 20 years, and you've never written it. Chances are you're going to get that quote submission again this year, put it at the bottom of the stack, and if you get to it, great, but you're not going to go out of your way to issue any special credits or discounts or get them in the best tier. Do not quote your insurance every year. Instead, track and keep and know what your LCM is and know what the market has to offer. If you're in an average LCM and you're doing great, now's the time to get a quote. Most of my clients get quotes about once every 3 years. Next, do not simply choose the lowest price. I call this the flawed and dangerous process where you have one or two agents come in every couple of years and you got your incumbent agent and you give them a pile of your deck sheets and you say, go out and find me the best price. They come back and they maybe save you 5%, maybe 10%. Instead, interview the agents, come up with a plan, make sure they understand how preventing injuries works and how to respond to new injuries and how to manage injuries and how to negotiate the best pricing. Just as you would like an attorney or a CPA, right? Don't just go with the cheapest price. Next, create a 3 to 5 year action plan to improve your risk management program and make your underwriters aware of that. Make sure you include that in your quote packet. Next is complete a mod and injury analysis. And the last one is to know your numbers and metrics. Here are the exact numbers I keep track of for my clients. Under the experience mod, I want to know what their previous mod is, the current mod, what their upcoming mod is. Typically that's released 2 to 3 months before the renewal date. What their minimum mod is, what their controllable mod is, the goal mod for next year, how many injuries they had, how many injuries we have so far this year. And over on this side, I'm keeping track of things like their LCM, their renewal date, their scheduled credit, if they're getting the drug-free credit, if they're getting the McPAP credit, the UCWCP credit, are they getting that? How much they're paying in total annual premium. You cannot improve anything you do not track. Here's a good example of the injury analysis and the impact these claims have had on their bottom line. When you have a claim on work comp, it sticks on your mod for 3 years. And in this case, this is real life. This is that daycare. This employee was lifting a baby either in her chair or out of a chair, tweaked her back, $38,000 is paid on that claim. 38 grand, which caused the mod to go up 34 points. And it stuck on there for 3 years, which resulted in $155,000 in extra work comp premium just on that one claim. This one is not much better. Now, this employee was at a company event at the park, slipped, hurt her knee, $30,000 paid on that work comp claim. Caused the mod to go up 33 points, $150,000 in increased work comp premium paid over 3 years. So between just those two claims for this daycare has resulted in about $300,000 in profit ripped out of their bottom line. Crazy. But this is important information that can be, calculated in the injury analysis. You also get to calculate your minimum mod. So if you go to this URL, jasonjwebb.com minimum mod, you'll get a copy of what a full 40-page injury analysis looks like. Here's a letter of recommendation provided by a client talking about how it's important that his agent understands how the pricing works and how it increases his profits. Here's my mission. I think this is all about people. Making those fat commission checks is pretty sweet, to be honest, but it's all about the people, right? I want to make sure that all mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters go home from work safely. And I target the highest risk industry classes, primarily manufacturing and construction. Here's a list of those freebies again, right? Job description, light duty offer, light duty list, and minimum mod. I'm the host of the Minnesota Made podcast. That's me and one of my happy guests. If you go to any podcast platform, it doesn't matter which one, this one says Spotify, and you type in Minnesota Made podcast and look for that logo, you'll find it. I wrote a book. We've got a stack of them there. If you want a copy of the book, all the things that we discussed today are mentioned in that book, plus a bunch more. We just kind of scratched the surface. Now I want to spend a couple minutes here. This is where it all starts. If you want to make a change, this is what I recommend you to do. So you go to this website, jasonjwebb.com/MSHC, Minnesota Safety and Health Conference. Up pops my calendar and schedule a 30-minute virtual meeting with myself. This isn't going to be one of my assistants. It's going to be with me. And we're going to talk about any of the things that are troubling you that you just don't want to deal with anymore. Maybe you want to do that injury analysis and see what those claims are causing, what kind of impact they're causing on your bottom line. Maybe you want to come up with a pricing strategy. Me, you, your CFO or controller, we can all meet online for 30 minutes and discuss that. I want to help you as much as I can, and this is a way of giving back. So I want to come full circle and come back to this one. So I am 49 years old, and it was just last year that I had enough courage built up, or enough, I don't know what you call it, to reach out to my biological dad. Never talked to this dude in my life. Did some research online, found his phone number. He's living in Oklahoma. Called a few times, didn't answer. Called the fourth time, he picked up. I was a little nervous, right? What do you say? So I introduced myself, and I got a response back like, I could have never guessed it. Never guessed it. So I introduced myself, and he's like, who? He had no idea who I was. No idea. So I had to double check. I'm like, wait, is your name this? Is your date of birth this? Were you born here? Were you in Vietnam? Yep. Got the right guy. I asked him about my mom. He remembers my mom. He had no idea who I was. Awkward. Right? Awkward. And here I've been telling myself this story for the last 49-ish years about, like, what the hell's wrong with him, or what's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want anything to do with me? What did I do? Right? I have 2 boys. I could not imagine disappearing from their life. So I got off the phone and I talked to my mom about it, and she said, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. She said, I heard that he had a really bad brain aneurysm shortly after the divorce, and that must have caused some type of memory loss. So I'm telling you this because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I have. I don't want you walking around life thinking there's something wrong with you, or pushing people away and you're like, screw it, I got it. I don't need your help, right? I don't want you to think you're less of a person because somebody kind of X'd you out of your life, because you don't know the real story. You're telling yourself a story, but you don't know the real story. And I look at it this way. I don't know if you remember the first time you seen the ocean, right? You're standing with your feet in the sand looking out to this vast body of water. It's almost like majestical. It's mysterious. It's powerful, right? It's intimidating. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the ocean and God. That's the way I personally feel. Now imagine taking a teaspoon of that water, putting it in a glass, bringing it home, sitting on your kitchen counter, right? You now have a piece of this mighty, powerful ocean sitting right there on your kitchen counter. It's the same water. So I believe, this is my belief, we are the children of God. Part of God is in all of us. And therefore, we can do anything. I start my day praying like this. I am the Son of God. Part of God is in me. And therefore, I can do anything. So I want you to believe in yourself. I want you to push yourself. I know God believes in you. I believe in you. And I'll help you any way I can. That's it. Thanks, guys.